Welcome back to the channel. We're going to continue working on our 2009 Honda Civic LX giveaway car. Now, we got some parts. Let's get them on the car so we can drive it around and see what other parts we need to order. Let's get started. So we're going to start by polishing up this headlight a little bit. Since our bumper's off, it's a little easier to do, and the clean freaks will rejoice. We're not going to go crazy and sand it or anything. It's not really that bad. It's kind of cloudy on the inside as well, but at least we'll get the surface and make it about 60% better. So it's just regular compound for buffing cars. Nothing special. We're just going to take a little bit of that haze off. The other headlight on the driver's side has been replaced, so it's nice and clear. This one wasn't changed from the last accident, although the bracket underneath was supposed to be. That's why there's a little pink X on it. If I were the insurance company, I think I'd be having a little chat with the body shop that was supposed to change it the last time. There's a better shot of our little pink X. There's also a hole rotted in that bracket up in the front. So now we're just going to go over it with some polish. Get all the fine scratches from the compound out. This is about the limit of my patience for buffing and polishing anything, whether it be a car or headlights. But I figured I'd get it done while the bumper's off. Save the detailing gnome a little work, but he can do the rest of the car. And now that our headlight's all clear, or as clear as it's going to get, because we can't clean the inside without taking the lens off, we're going to take the light out. It's going to be in our way, and we need it out to change that bracket on the bottom. We took all the bolts out of it, but it's still trapped in there. We're going to pull a bolt out of the fender and see if we can squeak it out of here. And we did. Now we can just unplug all the plugs and set it off to the side. Now we're going to change our condenser because all of the little fins have left the chat. So we'll unbolt it from the radiator support. Then we can unbolt the lines. Our system is empty. We had it emptied when we changed our engine. So I'm not killing the environment, at least not today. I have to work that bolt back and forth to break the corrosion out of it. It actually came out. A lot of times they snap off in there, and that's no fun. Wiggle our line out of there, and our condenser's out. And the bottom is missing even more fins than the top. Now we can unbolt our radiator. We're going to change the radiator as well. The top tank is leaking just a little bit. We'll unbolt the filler neck. I have to work these bolts back and forth so we don't break them off. I don't like rusty things. We'll tuck the filler back underneath the radiator support. Spring clamps, yay, and this thing's full of them. We'll pry that hose off of there. Set that off to the side. We'll unbolt our cooling fans from the back of the radiator. And we left the radiator hoses off when we changed the engine, because I knew I was going to be changing this radiator eventually. We didn't put any coolant in it. Tuck that cooling fan back over there. This one's a little bigger and it's going to be in our way, so we'll take it out of there. We'll disconnect the temp sensor at the bottom of the radiator, and our lower radiator hose is still disconnected from when we changed the engine. Now we're going to change our transmission cooler. Yay, more spring clamps. It was leaking right around one of the little elbows, so we're going to pull the hoses off. A couple of them are full of antifreeze and a couple of them are full of trans fluid. You don't want to mix them up. Take that one off. We can unbolt it from the trans. Two of the bolts we can get to. This one's kind of a pain. I didn't feel like taking the air box out, so we'll just struggle with a ratchet. Do it the old-fashioned way, caveman method. I would have changed all this stuff When it was sitting on the cart, it would have been a lot easier then, except I literally brought the car home on Friday and was putting the engine in on Saturday, so I didn't have time to get these parts. Since I was pulling the engine out of the other Civic and then pulling this one out and putting it back in, I wanted to do it on a day when I could work continuously. During the week, I have to do this after my regular job, so I don't have the same amount of time. I wanted to be able to spend a solid day if I needed it to swap all these engines out. Throwing a radiator, condenser, and a transcooler in, that's just a couple-hour job at the most. And since the front bumper was off, it makes the job even quicker. Except for the rusty bolts. That makes it a little bit slower. So now our struggle is over with that bolt. We're going to pull our transcooler out of here. We just left a few of the lines on it because it's kind of a pain to get to them. So now once it's out in the open, we can get to our spring clamps, pop those off of there, and change over our hoses. This hose I just left on there. We'll transfer it on the floor here. More spring clamps. Break the hose free. It likes it on there. Make sure we get it back on the right one. The coolant passages are a little bit bigger, so the hoses are bigger. It would be very difficult to screw it up, but I have complete confidence that it has been done before. Slide our hose clamp back on. Make sure we got it back in the right spot. And we'll slide our transcooler back up here. First we'll reattach some of the hoses that are easy to get to now. Slide our spring clamps down and tuck it back in its home. Bolt it in. It's easy to get to ones. We'll put our hoses back on. And then we'll put that other bolt in. It's not so easy to get to. Or maybe I left it out. We'll never know. Now that our transcooler is done, we can start switching over our radiator hoses to our new radiator so we can put that in. We did the transcooler first because it would have been more of a struggle if the radiator was in our way. And this is the most evil of all the spring clamps, the ones that hold themselves open on the locks. Usually just long enough to give you a false sense of security until you put your hand near them and then they snap closed on your fingers. People should really make some kind of protective covering for your hands so that that doesn't happen. Wonder why no one's ever thought of that. Anyway, I made it. I survived. It didn't get me. You've got to be quicker than the clamp. Now we're going to swap over the bottom hose. That has the European style clips on it. We just pull the little metal clip out, pop it off, put the metal clip back in, snap it on. Super easy. Good design. I wish they used more of that on every other car. We'll screw our little temp sensor into the bottom. Tighten it down with our torque wrench. Click. And we'll put our rubber baby buggy bumpers on the bottom. And we'll take the dull razor blade that we found laying on the ground, rusty, and we'll cut our little strap off of here and take our cardboard off. I leave that on there so I don't bend any fins on our brand new radiator while I'm working on it. We can drop our radiator in there. Set our cooling fans in. There's tabs on the bottom of the radiator they slide into. Why one has a plastic housing and another one has a metal housing, you'd have to ask Honda. And we can bolt our cooling fans in. Make sure you use the same bolts. You don't want to use ones that you just found that are too long. You end up with a radiator leak. Slide our filler tube on. We'll put our spring clamp back on there. We'll bolt our radiator in. And bolt our little filler neck in. Plug in our cooling fans. Now we can drop our condenser in here. I opted for the expensive one. Came with brand new rubber baby buggy bumpers. So we'll set those in there. And because it's from China, it doesn't fit perfect. So we're gonna force the little rubber baby buggy bumper in there. And put our bracket up on the top. The other bracket in. And tighten it all up. And we put our lines back on. We did change our O-rings. Those actually came with the condenser as well. Like I said, I bought the fancy condenser. Now we can change this bracket on the bottom of our headlight that the last body shop didn't.
In the pile.
It was left over from our parts car at Scott's Honda Emporium. The headlight was no good, but the bracket on the bottom was, so things kind of worked out. The tab on the outside, flip it into that, and our one bolt on the inside at the bottom. And our headlights ready to go back in. We'll plug it all in. And slide it back underneath our fender. Line up the tab in the back. And slide our light into the fender. And start bolting it in. Bolt the fender back in. And bolt the bottom bracket in. Then we're going to try and get the socket and extension back. It's a 10 millimeter, so you know that socket's headed for Narnia. And now we can change our oil. See what it looks like. Came off with a regular old wrench, so it probably wasn't done at Jiffy Lube the last time. Wasn't quick enough. Now we'll grab our oil filter wrench. Adjustable, of course. Maybe it was done at Jiffy Lube. That filter is pretty tight. That oil is pretty dark. So it was definitely due for an oil change. We'll spin our new filter on here. Get our torque rag and torque it down. Then we'll put our oil plug back in, crank it on there with a 6-foot breaker bar, and then send it to Jiffy Lube. Then we'll put our oil back in. And if you're wondering why I pick on Jiffy Lube so much, they deserve it. Recently had a car come into the shop that had the oil plug stripped out and Jiffy Lube refused to pay for it. They had just done the oil change and it started leaking oil a couple days later. So I guess they're saying that the owner climbed underneath his car and stripped it out. It wasn't their fault. Now we can throw the front bumper back up, clip it in with the bumper installation tool. Put a couple bolts in the top of it, the wrong ones that the last body shop used. And then we'll put the screws in the back of our bumper. And that's really all that holds it on. I'll put the undercover on. I guess this kind of holds the bumper on. Tuck it up underneath the shield in the front. Flip it into the wheel liners. Once it's in place, we can snap all our little push pins in there. We can throw the closeout panel up on the top, slide it underneath the hood release, safety release, and then it tucks underneath the grill. Put that in, put our little push pins in there, and take Mr. Spotty out. So now that we have our transcooler and our radiator and condenser in this thing, it's actually drivable, even as a front bumper. So we're going to put a few miles on it. We're going to set the monitors and make sure that there's no problems with the evap system or the CATs or the O2s. So we don't want the new owner to have to worry about any of that stuff. So if it's good now and sets all the monitors, hopefully it'll last them a while. We'll also take it for a ride and make sure everything that we did up there is good and nothing falls apart. And we'll also see if there's anything else falling apart that we need to replace before we're ready to send it to its new home. So let's go for a ride. But before we can be seen on the street with this thing, we need to fix what Honda couldn't. This is our horrible gap. The hood is too low. Pretty common on these things, as I have two of them I'm currently working on with the same issue. So we're going to put on our Honda hood adjustment tool. A little pressure on it, not too much. It's only a lawnmower. And we're good. Now our gap is like it should be. So somebody's going to know that somebody's been here before. And we still didn't make it out of the shop. It would not warm up after I threw the coolant back in it, so we're going to change our thermostat. This is probably the second easiest thermostat in the world to change, the first being GM38s. There's a little bracket that holds the wiring harness, unbolt that, and there's two bolts that hold the thermostat housing on, and pop that off. We'll grab our thermostat removal tool, pop it out of there, and it's stuck open. Kind of makes sense it's bad. So we'll take a razor blade and just clean up their surfaces. That helps dull the razor blade for future use, and that will be the one that I use. Put the gasket on our thermostat, stick it in there. Once we get the gasket set in the little indent, we put the thermostat housing over it, hopefully before it falls on the floor. And we'll hold the housing up against it, start our bolts. We'll grab our electric torque wrench and torque them down. Snug them up first, then we'll torque them down. And we can bolt our bracket back on, and we're done. Hopefully we have heat. I'm not a polar bear, I don't like the cold. We'll put our antifreeze back in. Honda chooses the washer fluid antifreeze. We only have to top it off. We didn't lose that much. I did drain the radiator after I filled it back up so that I could reuse it. And I only let out enough to be able to change the thermostat without making a huge mess. That's why we didn't have a huge mess. So hopefully now we'll have heat. Okay, we still haven't made it out of the shop yet. Our wiper blades are horrible, and it was starting to rain outside. There was actually a brand new one that came in the trunk, free with the purchase of a Honda Civic apparently. I don't know why they only had one, but at least I only had to buy one. So we'll snap the old ones off and snap the new ones on. Pretty simple. The hardest part is getting them out of the package. Darn child-proof packages. Come on, you have to be smarter than the plastic. You can do it. This guy calls himself a mechanic. I win. We'll unclip our old wiper blade. Toss that in the pile, and snap our new one on. So we drove our little Honda around. We hopefully set all the monitors. I'll check them right now. But we did get a TPMS light, so we're going to see which one of the tire sensors isn't reading. Must be this one. No sensor detected. Another one. Okay, either I got it wrong or there really is two bad ones. Okay, looks like we got two bad ones. So just our catalyst monitor and our evap. It's always those two. Everything else either set or not supported. Got our O2s, our EGR. Road trip. So our road trip was not a quiet one. We got a little clunking in the back. It's from our bad sway bar links. So we're going to change them out. You'll have to excuse the horrible camera placement for this entire job. The camera guy was cold, clearly. So you just put a pair of vice grips on the inside and spin the nut off of there. Halfway done. We'll take the one off the other side. Put our vice grip off, put it on the bottom, and unbolt the bottom one. Yay, rusty parts. This is a fun game I like to play. Is the smoke the penetrating oil burning off, or is it from the electric tools burning up? It was the oil burning off this time. Now we can unbolt the bottom from the control arm on the other side. We'll use our sway bar link as a hammer, because that's about all it's good for right now. Pop our new sway bar link in there. Start the nuts on there. Do the same thing on the other side. And then we can tighten them all up. You could see what I was doing if the cameraman had picked a better place for the camera. It's not my fault, I'm just trying to work here. So we'll tighten up this side. Looks like the camera's in a little better place this time. We'll pop our vice grips off of there. Now we got to change our tire sensors. We're going to try and spin it off, and it's not coming out of there. So we're going to have to do it the slow way. We're going to give it a few tries before we commit to the slow way, though. So we'll pull our valve core out. Now we're going to break our tire down. We're going to have to take it all the way off the rim this time. You can't just push it down on one side, because there's a broken tire sensor in there that we need to get out. You can hear it rattling around. We break the bead on both sides, clamp it up, pull the outside off. And we'll pull the inside out. Then make sure we don't hit that sensor. We don't want to break it anymore. Clamp some vice grips on what's left of our sensor, and it doesn't want to come out of there. It's not moving. So, attempt number 3. We're going to cut it off with our die grinder, but the experts will probably tell me I should have used the belt sander. I win. Just ground right through the bottom of it. Pop our new sensor in there. Put the nut back on it. We'll tighten it down with our antique ratchet. It's one of those fancy ones with 4 teeth in it. It was like 90 degrees in between clicks. But it was close. I didn't have to walk too far to get it. So now we can throw our tire back on. Make sure you put the sensor where it's not going to get hit with the bead. And we'll throw it on our balancer. It's actually pretty close. Only needed a ½ ounce on one side. Hammer down there. Is it the right hammer for this? I'm not sure. The experts will tell me. And it's balanced. Throw that one on the car. We'll go do the other one. We'll try our quick method again. It worked that time. The little nut / collar came off of there. So now you just push the sensor down in there. And it's flat. We took our tire off, put our new sensor in, and torque it down. Click. Balance this tire. This one wasn't quite as good as the other one, but it will be when I'm done, I hope. All zeros. Throw it on the car. So now we're going to program our tire sensors into the computer of the car to let it know it has new sensors in it. You can get clonable sensors where it basically just duplicates the old one and you don't have to do this step, but those are a little more expensive. This is actually not that difficult and saves me a couple bucks. So we program it in there, and now we got to take our car for a ride, and hopefully the light goes out if we did everything right. So while I was messing with wheel sensors, the brake John went ahead and changed our rear brake shoes. They were pretty worn out, at least on the driver's side. I guess nobody felt like adjusting the passenger side. They were pretty thin. In the pile. Now we're going to see if our joyriding has set the rest of the monitors. I like this little code reader. It requires no thinking. If the little green light's on, it means it's ready for the emissions test. All the monitors are set. If the yellow one's on, that means not all the monitors have set. And if the red one's on, it means that there's probably a code in there and we're going to not pass our emissions test. So you don't even have to think about it unless you see a light that's not green. So now I'm getting locked in the trunk. The Shadow Gnome is in the human smuggling. So we're going to see why our trunk is leaking. I hope it's not leaking too bad because I forgot my snorkel. So he's just going to run water around the outside edges. And I'm going to sit in here with the flashlight and see if I can figure out where it's coming from. I was really expecting it to come from the upper seal. I'm not seeing anything. There's a little residue on that deck lid. But he was instructed to go around the outside edge and then go around the lights. So that's where he's at now. And there's our leak. A couple. Somebody's been here before. So he's not trying to blast water in there and force a leak. He's basically just running water over it like you'd have in a maybe intense rainstorm. We're not going for hurricane proof, just keeping the rain out. So how did I know the trunk was leaking? Well, our spare tire was swimming. Our jack still works. Somebody had greased it all up. Somebody put a rear body panel on this at one time, and this is what happens when you don't use weld-through primer. Couple spot welds there. Change this inner piece. Looks like it might have been a very similar job to the one I'm doing on the Honda Civic Si. Hope my work is better than this. So the key for the trunk lock doesn't work. We can't blame the somebodies. When you don't use them up here in the salt belt, they do tend to corrode. We're going to put the key in there and spray a little penetrating oil. And we're just going to keep working the key. It's basically the wafers are kind of frozen in there. So we're kind of trying to push them off to the side and free them up. We're just going to keep working the key back and forth. I believe there's 5 in there. And I think we can get the first 2. Maybe another one there. So we're up to 3. Takes a little patience. If you use your locks all the time, this isn't a problem. If you're down south, this isn't a problem unless you get sand in it. But up here, if you don't use them, they freeze up. Pretty common. We're just going to keep wiggling it back and forth. A little more oil. We're not being shy here. And I'll save you the rest of the struggle. And there's the money shot. We got all the little wafers freed up in there.
That last one's still hanging up a little bit, but with some use it'll free up. Every time you put the key in there, it gets a little better. Now we're going to try and bolt in our finish panel. I don't even know why we tried. Now we'll pop the little clips out. Just squeeze the tab on either side and pry up on it a little bit. We'll start on the opposite side of where the bolt is. Work our way across. When we get to where the bolt is, we'll just slide it off of there. Put a pair of vice grips on it. And then we'll spin it off of there. Hopefully we won't break it. I don't know why they mounted this rusty thing in plastic. But the plastic doesn't really break. You can slide this back in there and it'll work again. We'll clean up the threads on that. Get it ready to go back in later. Pull our light out of here. I'm gonna fix it. We had a hole in the back of the deck lid, and there's a seam that's leaking there. This light is in the way. And the hole is from the tab that's missing off the center of the light. A little one right there. So Scott's Honda Emporium had one. Let's throw the new one in there. First we're gonna seam seal it. I'm not sure if this is a deck lid from Honda that was messed up, or if these deck lids come without seam sealer. I've never gotten a new Honda Civic deck lid, so I couldn't tell you. But if it came from Honda, it did a really horrible job. And if it came without seam sealer, the body shop did a horrible job seam sealing it. So I'll just throw a little in there. I'm not even going to paint it. Not going to worry about it. We had a broken license plate light that was hanging out, also letting water in. So we took one off our parts car. Put that in there. Put our screws on. Bolt our light in. Plug it in. Plug in our other light. And I will say, whoever is to blame for the leaks on this deck lid were at least consistent, because the seam sealer was horrible on this side too. So we're just going to touch up what they missed. It's right in the corner of this pocket. That's the one that was very visible when I was inside the trunk. Probably because it was almost like a downspout. Water came right into it, puddled up in that corner, and came right inside. I'll slap our light in there and check our lights. Turn signals work, brake lights work, reverse lights work. We have one license plate light out. So we're going to change that now. Hey, it works. We're going to change that bulb. Pop it out of there and pop our new one in. How many Scots does it take to change a light bulb? This seems to be a struggle for him. And then we'll just clip the base back in. Then we put our finish panel back on. Flip it on there. And we'll try our newly working lock. Oh, look at that. And we'll put our bolt back in. And we can plug in our trunk lock.
I think I might be done with our little Honda Civic here, but I can't be totally sure because I haven't checked the center console yet. Now, next time it comes back, we'll be giving it away, and it's going to be a lot cleaner. I'm going to hand it off to the detailing gnome, but I wanted to drive it around and find everything wrong with it, set the monitors, and make sure it was a good car before he cleaned it up because, well, it got dirty. and it's only gonna get dirtier with all the salt that's out there. So right now the pizza girl's going through a little over 500 emails. When she knocks that down to 10, she's gonna hand them off to me, and I'm gonna pick a winner. So we'll do all that in the next, hopefully, couple weeks, and when it comes back, it'll be going away. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you then.